So you're working or living in Malaysia. Great. But there's this one huge question that can make a massive difference to your finances. Are you a tax resident? Now, it can sound super complicated, but it really just boils down to four specific tests. And in this explainer, we are going to break down every single one of them.
The answer to this isn't just about how many stamps you have in your passport. It's all about meeting these very specific legal conditions set by the tax authorities. And trust me, you want to get this right, because your residency status is what determines your tax rate and all the reliefs you can claim. It's a big deal.
So here's our game plan. We're going to walk through the four official paths to becoming a tax resident. We'll start with the really straightforward 182-day rule, then get into the weeds with the linked stay and 90-day history tests. We'll even cover a wild scenario for former residents. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how this all works. Okay, before we dive in, this is the single most important rule of the day, so listen up. You do not need to pass all four of these tests. You just have to meet one. That's it. If you qualify under any one of these conditions, boom, you're a tax resident for that year. Let's keep that in mind as we jump into the first test. All right, let's kick things off with test number 1, the 18-2-day test. This is the most common one, the most direct path to residency, and it's probably the one you've heard of before. The magic number here is 182. It's really that simple. If you are physically in Malaysia for 182 days or more in one calendar year, congratulations, you're a tax resident for that year. Easy peasy. Wait, what exactly counts as a day? The details really matter here. First off, those 182 days don't have to be all in a row. A week here, a couple of months there, it all adds up. And get this, even part of a day counts as a whole day. So if your flight lands at 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, that counts as a full day towards your total. Okay, let's move on to our second test, and this is where things get a little more interesting. This one is for people who are in Malaysia for less than 182 days in a year, but have a much longer stay that's connected across 2 years. So this test is really designed for a very specific situation. Imagine you're here for, say, 100 days in 1 year. Normally, that's not enough. But if that 100-day stay is actually part of a much longer continuous stretch that bleeds over from the year before or into the next year, well, that link is what can make you a resident even if you don't hit the 182-day mark in that specific year. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you land in Malaysia in October 2023 and you stay all the way through until May 2024. Now, for the year 2023, you were there for less than 182 days. But because that period is linked to this much longer continuous stay, you can actually be considered a tax resident for 2023. See how that works? Now, for that long continuous stay to actually count, you can't just leave for any reason. The rules are super specific here. You can only take temporary breaks for things like work conferences, for health reasons, either your own or your immediate families, or for short social visits that, and this is key, don't add up to more than 14 days in total. All right, on to test number 3. This one is all about your history. It's kind of like a loyalty program. It looks back at how much time you've spent in Malaysia over the last few years to figure out your status for this year. Okay, to pass this test, 2 things have to happen. First, you need to be in Malaysia for at least 90 days in the current year. And second, you have to look back at the last 4 years. And in at least 3 of those 4 years, you had to have been either a tax resident or physically here for 90 days. So this is really a test of your consistent long-term connection to the country. And here's an important detail. Just like with that first test we talked about, none of these days need to be consecutive. Your 90 days this year can be spread out, and so can the 90-day periods in the previous years. It's the grand total that counts. And now for our final test. And honestly, this one's a bit of a mind bender. This is the only way you can become a tax resident for an entire year without spending a single day in Malaysia. Yep, you heard me right, 0 days. So how on earth does this work? Well, think of it as the gap year rule. You must have been a tax resident for the 3 years immediately before your year of absence. And, this is the crucial part, you also have to be a tax resident in the year immediately after your absence. It's basically a rule to maintain your status if you're an established resident who's away for a bit but is definitely coming back. Whew, okay, we have covered a lot of ground. We've gone through 4 very different ways to qualify for residency, from the super simple to the super specific. So let's take a breath and pull it all together in a quick and easy overview. This table right here, this is your ultimate cheat sheet. Test 1.
Your classic 182 days. Test 2, linking a short stay to a much longer one. Test 3, looking at your 90-day history. And Test 4, that special gap year rule for long-term residents.
And I'm going to say this one last time because it is the most important takeaway of the day. You only need to meet one of these conditions. It's not a checklist you have to complete. It's about finding that single test that fits your specific situation.
And there you have it, the 4 pathways to Malaysian tax residency. Once you break them down, they start to make a lot more sense, right? So the big question for you now is, which of these pathways applies to your situation? Now, of course, while this explainer is a guide, everyone's circumstances are unique, so chatting with a tax professional is always your smartest move. Thanks for tuning in.